Hi, now I am presenting a woman who I have been working with since May this year in the creation of Tool Spawn. We have not yet met in real life due to the pandemic, but we have been able to create amazing work together. Emilia Mörk de Merud is the CEO and co-founder of Hedylity Technology. Hedy is a tech innovation studio based in Stockholm, Sweden, with the UN SDGs at heart. Her passion is to use technology and create digital solutions that aims at solving the global goals. And today, she will share the importance of creating a business based on the values and how to create successful digital products from idea to launched products. And I can warmly recommend working with Emilia.
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning into this webinar today. We are going to talk about how to develop technology with focus on the Sustainable Development Goals. We're going to talk about how to take an idea to launch product and scale up. Very exciting. Let's start. So I was thinking that I'll start a little bit with talking about who I am, so you know who is talking for you. So my name is Emily, and I have a really strong passion for building companies and solutions that makes an impact. That is a little bit my core in everything that I do today. I have a background as an engineer from Chalmers, and I started my first company at Chalmers School of Entrepreneurship. That was vaccine against genital herpes, something completely different from what I do today. It was also there that I found social entrepreneurship through the projects that we did in Uganda. Then I became a management consultant to learn as much as possible in as short time as possible. And then I was part of the management team as ELOS, managing their whole transformation IT project. And was headhunted as a CEO for a tech consultancy firm, which I built through like 2.5 years or something. Really intense, but really fun, and I learned a lot. But then I came to a point where I realized I don't really own anything here, and I want to do something with a more purpose in mind. So in the end of 2018, me and Hannah Moisander founded Hedy. And Hedy is a tech innovation agency with the core of making a tech imprint for a better world. And this is what we do today. So we develop technology connected to the 17 global goals. So let's start with today's subjects and maybe some background for you who doesn't know what are the SDGs. So the Sustainable Development Goals addresses the global changes of poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. And you can see them all here on the slide. In 2015, all UN member states adopted these goals as part of 2030 Agenda for Sustainability Development. And this is sometimes, if you hear Agenda 2030, this is what they refer to. On the summit last year, the world leaders called for a decade of action, because as the calculations are now, we will not reach the 17 global goals in 2030. So they called for action, global action, local action, and people action. So in the core of this decade is the action to tackle growing poverty, empowerment of women and girls, and also address the climate emergency that we actually are having right now. But the world is also becoming better and better. People are getting access to healthcare, better jobs and education. But the inequalities and the climate changes are threatening to undo the gains that we are seeing here. And with the pandemic ongoing, the inequalities and also the poverty is increasing. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a tip if you don't know so much about this, which I hope you do. But if you don't, then please look into this film that was released on the 25th anniversary of United Nations and the 5th anniversary of the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals. So this film is called Nations United. And it tells a story of the world as it is today, as it was, and as it could be. So it presents facts and data and also opportunities, how we can reshape the future. And just as Nelson Mandela says, it always seems impossible until it's done. So look into this, get inspired, and start moving this forward. Everyone can do something. When it comes to technology and to make an impact with technology, there is a shift going on here. The world has seen technology as something, as an enemy, something that can take over the world. And sustainability is seen as fluffy, something that we need to do. But the shift is going on, and investors are focusing more on solutions and businesses with a core in sustainability. And top talents wants to work at companies that have great core values and focusing on making a real impact. And how to handle the emerging technology is also taking a part and place on the political agenda. So things are moving forward. Our strong belief is that technology will be the enabler for us to reach the global goals. We believe that companies which are reducing their environmental footprint and keep sustainability as a core have the brightest future. And it's no longer something that needs to be done on the side, but should be part of the solution. And that is why we founded Hedy, to help create innovations that have a great impact and to co-invest in ideas and companies that really makes a difference. So our mission is to become the #1 business and tech partner for innovative tech companies that really wants to make an impact. And a little bit of background for the name of our company. We knew that we wanted to honor a woman that has made a real impact within technology throughout the history. And we found Hedy Lamarr. She was a Hollywood star, an actress, and she was also one of the brightest persons in her lifetime. And her innovation of frequency hopping is actually the foundation of all the technology that we have today in our connected society. So Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, the satellite technology, it's her invention from the beginning. So to honor her, we named ourselves Hedy. So what we do is to take ideas connected to the 17 global goals to prototypes, launch products. We also scale up already existing products, and we partner up with corporates that wants to test new ideas or innovation before putting them into their core business. So I will tell you a little bit how to take an idea to a launch product in a smooth but also fast manner, and with focus on quality and scale up. So to do that, I will start a little bit with the statistics of startups. And this is really not so much fun because in overall, 90% of new startups fail. And that is not really nice statistics. And if you look at these numbers, it just, maybe it turns down a little bit of your excitement and the enthusiasm. But it's good to know because then you also know what to focus on, the key success factors. So what if you could maximize the likelihood of success? What has been seen as the keys for success in startups that actually do succeed is the persistence. That is a characteristics of the entrepreneurs, but also the company when they are succeeding. And successful startups also anticipate competitors' plans, and they stand out from the crowd. They also employ experienced mentors. They understand what they know and what they don't know. And then they employ the people and have people around them and complements their knowledge and increase the speed towards success. So how to create innovations that sticks? It starts with the business and the idea, of course. And innovation is always based on creativity. And there is a million ways to do this. You can, for instance, you can hold business workshops. creating functionality specifications and so on. You can have design sprints focusing on only one specific flow that you see as a core of your product. And this can be done in a very short period of time. You can do this in a week, and then you have the specific flow, so you can start testing. But you can also create a prototype through business strategy and also UX workshops together. So I will take you on this journey, how to do this. So in creating a prototype, for instance, it's always good to have a prototype before you do the tech development, because the tech development base all their functionalities and the business logic and everything on the prototype and the design. So a prototype is the happy flows of the product. It focuses on the functionality, but no coding. So you don't start with code. You start with the design. You start from the customer focus. So it could typically look like that you have a business strategy and requirement specification. And this is done iteratively, influenced both with Google's framework of design sprints and other experiences. And then we involved UX very early. So you sketch the design pretty much from the beginning when you start your specification. And the reason for doing this is because we as humans, we see things in a different way. Some people can read things and understand it completely and can picture it in your mind, but others don't do that. And also in order to have everything in line, it's really good to have wireframes and sketches on the table so that everyone can see the flows. We can adapt really early and see that, oh, this is not what we want to do. We want to do it in another way. And this also means that you can get customer insights really early on. So when you have these wireframes, and wireframes is a little bit like sketches you can click through. So mid-fi wireframes is more like without colors, doesn't look so nice for the eyes, but you have the function. And hi-fi wireframes is more focusing on the design and the whole graphical profile, everything is there. And then you can do the qualitative analysis of the customer insights. So you have, let's say, 5-6 customers, that is your core, and then you make them use the prototype, the hi-fi wireframes, and click through everything. And then you record, how do they actually use them? How do they use it? And also interview them in order to see how do they actually perceive the product. And then based on those qualitative analyses, then you adjust. So you improve the prototype. And this could be done in a lot of different ways. Usually before Corona, this is done when everyone is typically in a room together. You close the door and you're there for many hours, and then the creativity flows. But now in Corona time, you can also do this digitally, of course. You could have done it before as well, but now we are more into the digital approach of doing this. And we actually did this with Toolspawn. So the Ocean Opportunity Lab, the new platform for digital connections. When we did the whole functionality specification, the innovation part of what should actually Toolspawn include, then we did everything digitally. So I was sitting here in Stockholm and the team was sitting in Oslo, and we held all these workshops. It was really fun, really intense, but it shows that it can be done digitally. You don't need to be sitting in the same room, and you don't need to pause your innovations or ideas. You can do it even though Corona is happening and the pandemic is ongoing. So just wanted to give you a little bit of inspiration for this. The basis for the whole methodology is developed by Eric Rice from the book Lean Startup. Maybe you have read it. It bases on the idea that you have the idea, you experiment and you do the development, you measure the data, and then you iterate and you change the idea accordingly. So this is a loop that is ongoing from the start actually until the end. And also when you have released like version 1.0, 2.0, and so on, you still do this because the core here is the data. And the core is also that you know that you need to adjust the product accordingly in order to reach a successful product, in order to reach market fit for your customers, and so on. So now we're really into details. So I will show you a little bit how time process would look like when you take an idea to MVP and scale up. So as I've talked a bit about, it starts with validation of the idea. You do the business strategy creation, business modeling, competitor analysis, market fit analysis, and also the initial customer insights. Usually people have done this already or part of it. So we help on with some of it. And then you take the business creation and the UX design and combine it. So based on what you have for the validation of the idea, like the strategy and business model, etc., you do the whole business creation part. So you do the functionality specification, what features should this product actually include? And then you map the user journey and you go into sketches with just pen and paper from the beginning, and then mid-fi sketches and high-fi sketches with more graphical profile. And then you do the customer insights again with a focus on quality validation, as I also talked a little bit about before. And then, of course, based on that, you adjust. And then you have your first prototype. So the prototype is ready. What happens then? Well, you go into customer acquisition and the creation of the MVP. So it's really important to start early with creation partnership, customers, reaching out to the market, and so on. And as you do that, you also do the tech development. So based on the prototype and all those flows, you do the tech development, but you also do the UX design of the unhappy flows, the flows that maybe not is shown in the core flows from the beginning in the prototype. You create them, and then you also create the scope of the MVP, because it's really crucial here that you keep down the amount of features. When you launch your MVP, minimal viable product, it should be only including features that is the minimum to understand your customer and the appreciation of your product. Because otherwise you're not cost efficient, you're not time efficient, and you don't understand your market as early as you should. So this is really important. So here the tech development starts. And all the business logic, everything is starting here. Even though you have an MVP as a focus, you also focus on putting up the tech in a way so that you can put in the basis for scale in the future, but just in a reasonable measure. But you do think about it, because it is in the architecture and in the way you build. There you can prepare for a greater scale and a greater launch later on. So then you, of course, launch your MVP, and now you can start acquire customers. So here you do the qualitative insight again for the customer analysis, but also the quantitative, because in the product you have also entered measurements and data points. So you can understand what your customer is actually doing, using, how they like your product. And then you adapt the product again and again and again. And in the meantime, you also develop the features of version 1.0, because as you remember, the MVP is only limited. So now you're focusing on the 1.0 version. And you launch the 1.0 version. And then you continue to develop the 2.0. Here you continue, of course, the customer insights, the adapting of the product, and then you develop the features of the next version, preparing for scale. Here you can also add the growth hacking part, how to scale and reach out to as many customers as possible and your core target group. Then you launch your version 2.0 and hopefully this takes off. And version 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, etc. This will continue all the time as you grow your company, as you grow your product, and maybe the vision of what you want for your customer is version 5.0. It definitely is not the MVP or maybe version 1.0, but I mean, you have a great vision, right? And that includes a lot of features, a lot of things. So then this will take some iterations, and it's a good thing to do it in small portions at a time, because then you also know that it's not your imagination of what the customer wants, but what the customer actually wants that you are releasing. So the prototype is ready. So when the prototype is ready, what happens then before you do the MVP development? Well, here you could actually pitch for investors because you have a prototype, which means that you have, it looks like an app or website, web application. You can click it through. So that will also increase the understanding of what it is that you want to create. You have the whole business idea, the strategy, the tech and business roadmap, so you can pitch for investors here. However, our recommendation is usually that either you have own capital or grants to cover the building of the MVP. And the reason for this is then you have a greater value in the company. When you have the MVP, you have the first acquired customers that is paying for what you actually are providing. And it's better to approach investors with that, because then you have a greater value in the company and you don't need to give away as much as you might need to in early stages. So this whole thing is also called the lean analytics stages. So if you look at these stages, in the beginning, you actually are focusing on empathy. So this is where you have found the poorly met need on the market. You know your target group, you know what you want to create, and then you have figured out the solution. So you have created the prototype, you have validated it, and you have seen that, oh yeah, it does meet a need and they do want this. And then you build the MVP. And you want to come to the stickiness of the product. So if you know what kind of business you are and which stage you are in, then you can track and optimize the data, the measurements. So then you know what to measure, when to measure, why and how. And that is the core for the analytics and to grow. And if you could combine this, so now I'm just putting things together. And so if you combined the actually timeline that we talked about before, then you can see here that the first stages are already before the empathy part, the creation of the business idea and so on. And then the MVP is coming here. So the prototype is there in the empathy stage, and then you have the MVP. So that is a little bit the beginning until you grow and you get the revenue, the scale, and so on and so on. And then hopefully an exit if that is your strategy. So now I've been talking a little bit about MVP, and some of you might wonder, what is MVP? So minimum viable product, that's the name. And it's a version of a new product that allows a team to collect the maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least effort possible. So you usually say a little bit like when you launch an MVP, it should hurt a little in the stomach, because it's not really the big launch that you're visioning, because that would be not so good to launch that directly, because you don't know how the customer responds. Usually also you can talk about minimum marketable product. It's a little bit the same thing. It's the smallest possible feature set that addresses the needs of the initial users. And some people also talk about product market fit. And this is reached a little bit, I tried to draw the business value here and the cycle. So in the beginning is the prototyping, and then you have the MVP, the MMP launch, and then when it takes off a little bit, then you have the product market fit. So then you know, oh, this is when people sell for you. So you have come a little bit longer also in these, let me show you again, in this stages here, because people are selling for you. It's growing organically. Yeah, let's continue. So do's and don'ts when building digital products. Well, choosing a tech stack, that's like the core, you start from the tech development part. So a tech stack, what is that? Let's start there. It consists of a front end. You can think of it like the face, the thing you see. And then the back end, you can think of it like the brain. It's there, the whole logic and business is there, the algorithm, everything, but you don't see it. And it's a little bit the choice of programming languages, the frameworks and so on, and it affects the future of your product. So it's really important what you choose here. And to consider when you do choose your tech stack is lifespan, the support, if it's developer friendly, the community behind it, and also the ability to hire. Because if you have a strategy to build your own internal tech team, then it's important what kind of tech stack and programming languages, etc., that you have chosen. Because for instance, in Sweden, if you want to have like the top talents, you need to think about the programming languages you're choosing, because it might be really hard to hire talents if you have a tech stack that is outdated or no one wants to program anymore. So it's actually a really important thing to consider. And it's also important here to understand that it's no one-fits-all solution, because it depends a little bit. We have built solutions that are kind of straightforward, not so complicated in the business logic and so on. And then you can choose a certain set of technologies. But then you have maybe a more heavy product that requires more business logics. It requires more features and so on in that are more complex. And then you need to choose another kind of tech stack. So we never say, we can say in the beginning, like, okay, we think it might be like this, but then based on the prototyping and the customer insights there, then after that, you choose the tech stack, because then you know what the product, what is the vision with the product, what should it do, and so on and so on. So it's always the business that chooses the tech, and not like the technical part that should be adapting. You should adapt the business towards tech. It is always the business and the vision that is making the requirements here. And then when it comes to the team, how to choose a good tech team? Well, the personality is really important, of course, that the people have a passion for their field of expertise, that they love programming, coding, tech in general, and that they are problem solvers and flexible and bold. Because building products like this means that you need to switch focus, not just one time, but a lot of times. And you might also go into areas that you haven't done before and so on. So it's really important with the attitude here and personality. And a typical MVP tech team setup is a product owner, which is the one that is like the bridge between business and tech. And then a UX UI designer, that is the core of the prototyping and also during the whole process. And then a tech architect or senior stack developer that is putting everything together in how it should be now and also preparing for scale in the future. And a junior full stack developer, so that they can complement each other. So usually 3-4 persons for building the MVP. And of course, do not underestimate the UX design. So the trends actually indicates that UX will be the differentiator in the future for determining success of digital products. And this is really exciting because design and the way we are focusing now on customer, that will be the core for success in the future. And yeah, it's not possible to glitter UX over an already developed product. It's not possible. People are unfortunately thinking that it could be done, but the ending and the result is really not so good. So consider it from the start already when you do the business strategy, functionality specification. Take in UX. It's so important. So outsourcing abroad, yes or no? Well, it depends a little bit. So if you have a great tech architect or CDO already on board, and you have that he or she can set up the tech stack and they can lead the development, then I think it could be doable. But unfortunately, my experience is that it costs more than it tastes, as the Swedish expression. Because usually you are attracted by the low cost, but in the end, it might be so that they have chosen, for instance, a tech stack that is not applicable for the future tech team that you are going to hire. Or you can end up with security issues or things that have been, because they don't understand the business, they haven't foreseen some challenges and so on and so on. And also it's very important with the quality of the code. Because if you're going to hand over something that is really built in your core of your product, your whole business, if you're going to hand it over to a team in the future that you have in-house, they need to understand what has been built. So you don't sit there and you need to rebuild everything. So really consider just once and twice before taking this kind of decision. And partner up. Well, yes, of course, but I'm biased. So if you want a full team to deliver what you want in the beginning in a cost-efficient way, of course, partner up with a good innovation agency or whatever you have contacts to. Or if you want to also recruit in the future, then we can help you to recruit the right talents at the right time and hand over the technology. Because sometimes it could be really, and it is really expensive to hire the full team from the beginning. Because usually people look for one person that is going to fit everything, and they rarely exist. If they exist, you need to pay a lot of money or give away a lot of your company. So yeah, this could be a solution to actually reach what you want. So then you are about to launch your product. So how should you do that? Well, what is the strategy? Should you do it with invites only, a big hype, or a controlled launch? And after the launch, then the fun begins. So how do the customer actually respond? So measure and track immediately after the launch. And measure both qualitatively and quantitatively. So you can analyze it and evaluate and adapt, measure, develop, adapt, measure, develop. That is the loop you need to go into now. And also one more thing that I want to talk to you about is when thinking about the price strategy, never remove features from the free tiers, only add new ones when developing the products for scale. So a customer never wants to have done something and then, oh, now I cannot do it anymore. So it's better to start at the minimum, as we have talked about, and then just add features, and then you can add the tires as well. So some takeaways here, what to keep in mind. Develop and prepare for scale already from the beginning, but in a reasonable manner, of course. And be customer-centric. The design is the key here. So start also with the design really, really early. Stay focused. Focus is like the key to success. So stay focused on what you're doing and what your vision is. And work agile. It's really hard to set up, when you're building something new, it's really hard to set up a scope and a deadline with something that can change so much depending upon how customers respond and so on. So work agile and release in small steps all the time, because then you know that you will always have what is best for the business first. That is how agile works. And also remember, the key to future success is the sustainability. So develop innovations that will help the world to solve the global goals. And of course, as an ending, if you want to come in contact with us, you have the email here, you have the phone number to me and also to my co-founder, Hanna. And yeah, let's do this. Thank you so much for tuning in and for listening to me today. And I hope that you have got some of the essence of what I've talked about, and that it will help you now to develop your idea and your innovations, and so to take it to the next stage in your company. Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Gigi Ho. She's a UX designer and part of the team at Hedylity Technology. She has a big passion for solving problems and to create user-centered designs. Her many years of coding, exploring, and developing digital products has led her to dive even deeper into the experience of the user. Today, she will share her best takeaways when it comes to develop digital products with the user at heart.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today to this webinar. Today we will talk about UX. To start with, I will start sharing my slides first. Yeah. As Stephanie is helping behind the scenes, she is very, very cool. Thank you, Stephanie. So, right. Today we will talk about this topic on user-centered design, the key in building successful digital products. Oops. Okay. A little bit about myself first. My name is Gigi. I work as a UX designer, front-end developer at Hedy. So the way that I would present myself professionally, I would say, I'm just going to read this now. I come in when design meets development. I like to build stuff and I also like to design. By knowing both and doing both, I can deliver user-centric values through the most streamlined design and development process. I think that's pretty much describe how I stand in my job. So I have 8 years of experience in technical and development, technical digital product development. And I started as a web developer, full-on coding for quite some years. And I still love to code, still do it today. But it's just following the development of like many different consumer products. That's what I work with the most. I had this feeling that I really want to connect with my users and like the users of these products that I built. So gradually then I just follow my path, and now I have become a UX designer at Hedy, which is amazing. I really love my current job and this company as well. So now here I am in charge of the UX of most of our innovation studio projects. And I also work with front-end development. I still code. And yeah, so my job is basically in one line about seamlessly carrying product from concepts to prototype and launch. I had my education in Europe and Hong Kong on the subjects of human-computer interaction and design, innovation and entrepreneurship, and also internet and multimedia technologies. So that's me. So on this topic, user-centered design. What is user-centered design? So user-centered, sometimes also called human-centered or user-centric. In the business domain, they might call it customer-centered, customer-centric. They are like just different names, but really similar concept. Essentially, this is a development process that puts people at the center of the process rather than technology and business. We can also call it user-driven. Before we talk about what is, I would like to first talk about what is not. So historically, a lot of computer system or technical products, they were designed by engineers and developers, which makes sense because they were the people who created technology. And of course, then they designed and made a system or a product out of it. But then if you remember back in the days, like back before the GUI era, like those systems that we were using, how user-friendly they were compared to what we have today. That's probably because those engineers or system designers, maybe they understand computers more than humans. In contrast, product development process can be business driven. So basically, most product ideas, they might come from the CEO or like the business development team. And this could be a very different workflow or mentality as well. Coming back to having user at the center, what is user-centered design? I think the core value of it is really to put users' needs and goals in our everyday values. So we have users at heart in everything we do. It could be a mentality, it could be a principle, but essentially it is also a collection of design methods and activities in the work that we do. So these methods and activities could, for example, include user personas, user interviews, user journey empathy map, user testing, which is very important. And a lot of this method, they actually got borrowed to the innovation domain, the business world, and they become an umbrella term called design thinking. And design thinking is probably like a buzzword that you would heard quite a lot in the industry, which is like very commonly practiced in startup worlds. So if you are developing a technical product, a tech product, I would say you have to use at least a few of these methods in order for people to believe you that you are actually practicing user-centered design for real, but not only saying it because it's a hype. If you're not doing any of this, then I wouldn't believe that you're actually having a user-centered mindset, so to speak. Okay. Recalling the title of this webinar, User-Centered Design, the Key in Building Successful Digital Products. So what is this key we're talking really? I think this key is really about finding this key. It's really about finding that overlapping area of business goals and user goals. And at the same time, leveraging the right technology. If I have to explain my webinar topic in one picture, then this will be the slide. I love using emojis, so you see a lot of them in these slides. Okay, so why is UX important? Why are we talking so much about UX? And why will it become more and more important? Of course, that's how we believe it. That's why we're working with it. So when you think about our current world, the society, humanity, everything is constantly evolving. So as customers, humans, users, they are becoming more and more conscious. Economy and consumption, they used to be price driven, and nowadays they're more value driven. And decision making is always as well just emotional driven most of the time. That's why UX is so important, because the core of UX is to fulfill customer and users' needs. business and organizations, they need to provide positive user experience that to keep users or customers loyal to the product or the brand. I also like to see this as a pyramid of needs, you know, the classic hierarchy of needs. And in the bottom of this pyramid, we have basic user needs. So for a product to be useful, for business to succeed, the product has to be useful. We have to help users to get the job done. We have to understand what user needs, and we try to fulfill these needs. And then going up to the pyramid, I could say it as like help the user to get the job done without frictions. Essentially, it means good usability. And going up to the top of the pyramid, I can frame it this way: help the users to get the job done without frictions happily. Here we care about the emotions, because we know that like if we can make our customer, a user, satisfied, happy customers, they would come back, they would become loyal customers, and this will lead to business success. So I think when it comes to this pyramid, maybe like with business or marketing, they would take care of the base, but then if you need to fulfill the upper thing, the upper two decks, then you really need to have this design thinking and user-driven mindset in order to reach the top. I also like to mention a framework that we would commonly use in UX evaluation, which is a framework having these three factors called effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. So it's a very common framework for us to evaluate whether a product or service have a good UX or not. Here, I would like to talk a little bit about the traditional development process. Okay, so imagine like back in the days, like not in this modern world, like when we have, when the business started to have a concept, maybe they would decide on the business development and the product strategies. How would we put this product concept to the market? And before it get launched to the market, then of course then we need the design, right? So we need the design of this product, and maybe it would be a lot about like visual design, how does it look like, what branding do we want to use, like what style, and then you have to come up with like different UI screens, and then you have this design deliveries, and then you pass it to the developers, the tech team, and they are the ones to implement it. So then they would have to design on the system architect, and they would have to code it. Software developers would do that. And after that, then you can get to launch. Oh, but you realize once you launch it in the market, you realize customers don't like it. They don't use this product. And after all this whole 12 months of work, and customers don't use it, they don't like it. And isn't it such a shame? How do we solve it though? Like nowadays, that's why we would have this more iterative kind of process. So it's a very common way or process to work in the design world, is that like we'd like to, from a concept to implementation, there's this big space in between. There's a lot of UX design work we could do to prove that this concept works before we actually spend time into development. Okay, so the concept part, like similarly, you will have like innovation, you think about strategies and the business model. And then from there, UX design would take this to do UX research, to understand the business concept, to understand our target users. And then maybe we'll use methods like user journey, or we would do expert interviews, different kind of methods. And then after we have understand enough, then we would take it to the design step. In the design step, we would use a co-design workshops to involve a diverse team of different stakeholders and different experts in different domains. And then we would create user flows, and then we would do sketches, wireframes, and we would put them into like UI design, interaction design. And the next step, very important, is to create a prototype to test. This step, I would say, is the most important part of the whole user-centered thinking is that with this prototype, we test it with real users, ideally real users. So to get them to see if they actually approve it or not. By approving it means, if they like the product, or if they actually find problem in using the product, if it's smooth or not, good UX or bad UX. And this process is iterative. So you can see, if we find something wrong in our prototype testing, then we can go back to do redesign or re-understand a little more and to do a better version. It's a constantly improvement kind of thinking as well. And when it comes to prototype testing, it's best to test with real users, but it's not necessary. You can also do expert testing, but then real user is always more preferred. And this iterative process, it usually takes a few weeks. And so when you compare to the previous one that we have 12 months, and now we can boil it down to like a few weeks. We can test it with real users before we waste that 12 months into development. So yeah, that's how, why UX is so important, because it really saves you a lot of development time and cost. I hope this is convincing enough. Okay. So you may say, now I'm convinced, but how? There are some commonly practiced methods and some effective design methods and toolkits that I have already mentioned earlier, some names. But I think the upcoming ones are kind of like my personal insights. They are my personal favorites. Okay, the first one, always validate. It's okay to make assumptions. UX designers, or if you're in the business, we are supposed to understand basic human cognitive. As designers, we are supposed to understand these things and design principles when we do designs. And we make knowledgeable guess and knowledgeable design assumptions when we work. It's okay. We make assumptions, but it's good to validate them. And this kind of validation, it doesn't have to be super advanced. Of course, we have some very predefined methods and a good way to make sure you collect good data, but it doesn't have to be like a huge sample size. Like when we're doing prototype testing in UX design, we usually prefer to do a qualitative prototype testing, because this is only a concept stage, and in the concept stage, we can be a bit more explorative. So instead of going for the big numbers to look for statistical significance, 100 sample size or even more, no, you don't need that, because it's a concept focused on the deep quality sense. And so basically you only need to test with around 5 users to find out most of the usability problems you can find in the product, around 80%. And so this test is best to do with real users, as I said, but it's also fine to do with experts. Maybe you have some expert designers. We can do some just heuristic evaluation. We can also find usability problems very fast. And so expert test, user test, either remote user test or face-to-face user test. It's really up to the design process that you're using, or the challenges you were trying to solve. And also one thing, it's best to test with at least anyone than testing with no one at all. If you keep that in mind, then it would just force you to really try to validate if you can. Okay. Number 2, understand and learn. I think this is such a big thing when it comes to UX design. It's so much about understanding humans, what are our user thinking and what can we learn from them? What are their needs? What are their pains? And understanding users is one thing, but it's also about understand the whole team, the business stakeholders, or basically your team members as well. As a good designer, we need to understand our users, their problem, their needs, by mentalization, by understanding their rationales. But I would also say, as an even better designer, you need to spread this understanding also to the whole team, to the whole development team that is working on this product, and also to the stakeholders. Because in that sense, then we can really carry this development chain from concept to launch, still keeping users at heart. And yeah, we should be a user advocate as a designer. Another important thing is that understand the problem is also key to start with asking the right question. And UX design is about problem solving and helping users to get the job done. So a crucial part to achieve that is about setting the right research question to start with by asking user the first right question. Yeah, it's important to understand these problems well enough before we actually spend time into digging through them with the team. Also about saving time and cost. Okay, so next one is about create with empathy. So after understand the basic rationale, like the rational needs and all these things from the users, you have done a pretty good job as a designer, I would say. But I think the really next level is to reach the user's heart. And this is done by having empathy, not only to understand, but really feel for the users. Thinking about, like in the tech world, like we talk so much about AI taking over the world, AI will be taking our jobs. And when you think about this, and actually empathy is probably the last thing computers can do for us. And therefore why this is super important for designers or generally humans in general to focus on this empathy job. Okay, final tip. This is about co-creative design, which is also known as participatory design. Okay, so this is an attempt to actively involve all stakeholders in the design process. This team could include like experts in different domains, like maybe they could be engineers, they could be researchers, designers, marketer, and business owners, of course. And the idea is to have this multidisciplinary team that we can collect all the thinking and different ideas into one team that will work together to design this product. It also likes to adopt democratic decision-making process. So the decisions are usually made as a team collectively instead of by one single source of power. This decision-making process usually, yes, it might take a little more time, especially the discussion part. You know, this discussion can get really lengthy and extensive sometimes. But then there are also a lot of like design methods that we can use in order to facilitate the working process as a team to work more effectively, cutting down on this lengthy discussion points. And so if you really believe in people, believing in diversity, I guess we would really want to spend more time in investing this method because we believe this will bring us extra quality and values to the products. Because instead of trusting one person, maybe the boss, that he's got his or her gut feeling, we would rather like to trust a collective decision and opinions, feedback made by a team of diverse experts. So this is basically the concept when it comes to like the design part of user-centered design. Okay, so that was my last tip. And here is just some final takeaway that I hope you could bring it with you. So we talk about the what, like what is user-centered design? It's about having users at heart in everything we do. And the key about it is about finding the overlapping area of business and user goals, at the same time leveraging the right technology. Why? Because we want to help users to get their job done without frictions happily. And this will lead to customer loyalty, and eventually business success. It also saves you a lot of development time and cost. And finally, the how. Number 1, always validate. Number 2, understand and learn. Number 3, create with empathy. And number 4, co-creative design. Yes, so this is pretty much everything I would like to share with you today. I hope you find some of this content useful. And yes, let's do this.